Hi, everyone. Owner is a restaurant tech software startup that builds for mom and pop restaurants, helping them compete with the Goliaths of the industry, your Sweetgreens, your Domino's, etc., by giving the mom and pop restaurants access to the same types of tools, tech, and resources that the big dogs have. Our ICP is independent restaurants, independent restaurateurs, which makes for a little bit of a unique GTM motion. We are technically B2B, but we have a lot of B2C flavor, especially since it's really difficult to connect with the decision maker of a restaurant, usually the owner, to get them to actually agree to use the product. As a result, obviously still the quality of sales craft and data matters, but we really care about the efficiency and volume. Over the last couple months, the Applied AI team has had the chance to work on a few cool different AI projects. The main ones for GTM did focus on efficiency and volume. One was a gradient boosted tree, machine learning model that lets us identify leads that have a much higher chance of DMC, or decision maker connects, which basically means if we pick up the phone and call them, will we connect with the decision maker? The top decile of those leads, I think, have up to like a 2.2, 2.3x increase in DMC rate, which is cool. The second, I don't think I'm going to have time to talk about, but if you catch me after, we can yap about it. But it's pre-call research automation, basically taking a lot of the manual research and clicking around that the reps did before picking up the phone and dialing, eliminated that, resulting in about a 80% increase in dial volume. My name is YG. I lead Applied AI at Owner, and my secret is I'm not that smart. And I'm really not good at math. But my superpower is I'm very comfortable feeling stupid, and I'm really good at asking questions until I no longer feel stupid. And so thanks to our dear friend Claude being a tutor of infinite patience, I've been learning some new stuff. This all started with iRouting, Owner's intelligent routing system, which pretty much just did two things. First, scored and identified top leads. And second, it automatically assigned and routed those leads to our outbound sales team. The goal of the system was to optimize all the leads we're working every day, every week, and also to eliminate the unnecessary manual work that just takes up time. The issue was iRouting was not running. And so I received one of those very vague and ambiguous tasks that everyone in startup land knows and loves or hates. Mine was, bring back iRouting and make it better. Okay, this is my boss, Jonathan. Very cool, very smart guy. Jonathan, if you're watching this recording, please don't fire me. And so I kicked off the 0-1 process with a little bit of digging. What's the current state of iRouting? Well, it seems like the sales managers were putting together a bunch of manual lists of leads in Salesforce, comboing like 30 filters at a time, basically to try and surface like unique, different combinations of leads for the reps to work. The issue is the leads weren't that good. And second, it took them hours of the time every single week. So just not optimal, not efficient. Digging a little further, why did the reps stop using the iRouting leads? Well, it seems like they didn't really trust the quality of what they were being given. Why? Because of leads like this. This one had an iRouting score of negative 6,998,200, which, if you couldn't guess, is a bad score. But this one still closed one. So obviously, there's something a little funky with the scoring. And so finally, I pulled up the scoring script. I spun up Claude Code. I said, Claude, I'm trying to understand the scoring in this script. I'm seeing in the code there's like 10,000 points if they use Toast POS, 5,000 points if they have like 100 plus Google reviews. Where do the scores come from? What are they based off of? How do we calibrate them? And so Claude went into the script and looked around and kind of read the code. And Claude came back to me and said, I don't know. Okay, cool. Thank you, Claude. It's okay. I'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. And so I went back to Jonathan. I said, hey, Jonathan, boss, it's been a few years since you wrote the script, I know. But I was just curious, where did we get the scores from? What are they based off of? And how do we calibrate the scores? And Jonathan said to me, I don't know. I'm paraphrasing. And so I realized we have to rebuild this from scratch. And so this is when I kicked off a serious dialogue with Claude. Basically just voice note dumping everything that I learned about iRouting. I connected Claude Code to Slack, Notion, Google Docs, so it could read all the documentation and the communication of iRouting. I connected it also to the Snowflake MCP, so it could actually access our data, retrieve it, understand it, figure out exactly what it is that we're tracking and what we can do. And so after a lot of discussion, going back and forth, just to make sure we were kind of on the same page, Claude started suggesting machine learning as a solution. I don't fucking know machine learning. I don't know what it is. I don't know how it works. I don't know the math. But Claude was very adamant. Said, no, like based on everything you shared with me, based on the data we have, like this is the optimal solution. We can use a gradient boosted tree. It does blah blah blah, and it's really good for predicting binary outcomes. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. We have a lot of binary outcomes in sales. At the bottom of the funnel, the most important one is close won, close lost. But that's a little removed from what the outbound BDR team is doing every day. So look at the top of the funnel. I wonder if we can predict DMCs, decision maker connects. That's a binary outcome. It's either we connect with a decision maker or we don't. And Claude said, okay, yeah, that makes sense based on the context you've given me and the data that we have. Would you like me to write a plan? And I said, no, just do it. And thus began 2 weeks of hell. I had to double check, gut check, triple check, disagree with everything Claude was doing, all the while not knowing anything Claude was doing. You know what they say about building an airplane while you're flying? This was that. But after 2 weeks of frustration and arguments and some cigarette breaks and some 4 a.m. bedtimes, at the end of it, we had a nice little baby gradient boosted tree model. And it looked really good on paper. It said, we're able to rank the leads, and the best leads, the top decile, they're going to DMC at 2.2x, 2.3x the rate of the average. Which sounded really good on paper, but as we all know, the rubber has to hit the road. And so I worked with sales, and we put together a cool little experimental tiger team. 3 reps would get only the best scored iRouting leads, and the rest of the reps would just get the ones that they normally work. I was not optimistic. I had not written any of the code. I didn't know the math. I understood how the system worked, but only from a very abstracted point of view. I didn't think we were going to hit our number or double whatever. But I was going to be very happy with a 30%, a 40% bump. It is what it is. And so we launched the experiment. And we hit our fucking numbers. Double DMCs. So this story, thankfully, has a happy ending. The score, the machine learning model worked. I didn't end up wasting 2 weeks of my life for no reason. And now, today, iRouting is back in business. It's running. It's beautiful. But I still don't know machine learning. I don't know how it works. I don't know the math. If I had come up here tonight and said I was a machine learning expert, I think any actual machine learning expert in the audience would have the right to come up here and beat my ass on stage. But what I can say is, a gradient boosted tree is an ensemble learning method used to create a predictive model that basically layers decision trees on top of each other and takes into account the error gradient of each iteration. As it builds, it combines all the trees, and even though they're individually weak, what they do is they combine and they take all of the unique interactions between the data points into account, making for a really strong model. Additionally, the data input that goes into it is kind of split into 4 categories. There's the training, the validation, the calibration, and the testing. The training is training. The validation helps us know when training is going right or wrong, and the testing lets us know it works in real life. The calibration is unique because it's a little optional, because what it does is it anchors our output to real-world probabilities, which we didn't really use in this case because we just care about the relative ranking, but in theory, it could be really useful. Not too bad for 2 weeks of tutoring, right? Thank you, thank you. I just asked a bunch of dumb questions, and now I'm a little less dumb. That's it for me. I'd like to end with a shameless plug. If you love building cool AI shit and you're really fucking good at it, hit us up. Because as of 2 weeks ago, we got approval to scale out our applied AI team. Just go to owner.com, and I think it's the career tabs, and you're good to go. I'm really excited. I love what I do, and my work doesn't feel like work because it feels like play. If you are someone who also feels that way when working with AI, I would be deeply honored and grateful for the chance to build with you. Because isn't that why we all love AI so much? It's fun, it's interesting, and most importantly, you can just do things. Thank you very much.
A lot of info there. Do we have any questions? We have time for 2 questions. Yeah, in the back.
Did you change any other variables or factors like in the sales process or the business process with the reps that are dialing, aside from telling them who to call?
We changed their cadences. So because the score, which we ended up calling eConnect, we were able to run it daily at no cost. So we realized we could actually optimize on like a daily, like very granular basis, like every single lead we were attempting to contact. And so we switched from like a multi-step, like 1-week cadence to actually like we rip and replace their leads every single day. Because if someone doesn't pick up and the rep doesn't make a connection, like there's no actual attachment to that lead. It's free game, and there's potentially another lead the next day that has a much better eConnect score. So there's no point in holding on to something that's less optimal than what we actually know is optimal. So I would say that was the biggest change we implemented. Yeah.
In hindsight, does the scoring model make sense, or is it one of those like ghost in the machine things?
In terms of like what goes into the actual score output?
Yeah.
Yeah, so a big part of the 2-week hell process was we had to figure out what variables we would actually want to like train the model. And so we had to distinguish between like variables we actually wanted and variables we didn't. So for example, technically, I think like PST leads close or like DMC at a higher rate, but that's just because like we're East Coast, and so we happen to call them at better times. We didn't want to include that as training data because then it would just bias us to only calling PST leads, which we didn't want. So there was a good amount of like feature engineering. Claude initially tried to like do it one by one. It was like hundreds of features. So we ended up building like a programmatic thing that just like looks at the DMC rate for every individual variable, and then we just like manually sense checked it and then included it in the model. Yeah. Good question. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you, YG. I'm still impressed by your Rain Man impersonation. Shashank is up.